Welcome back, folks. My name is LastKnownMeal, and welcome to the Cyberpunk 2077 Community Podcast, episode 66. Today with me is the usual squad, starting from the right, MadQueenShow, welcome.
Greetings, Earthlings.
Then we have the Neon Arcade.
Hello, hello.
And Subsidian from the Triple S League.
Hello, everybody.
I think everything should be working. Can everyone hear us? I think we are good. Now, welcome everyone. We are at the episode 66. This is somewhat of a post-Night City Wire news and discussion podcast. We had a lot to process over the past 2 weeks. But before we begin, Sib, you wanted to talk a little bit about Wreckful, right?
Yeah, so Wreckful passed away this week. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it. He was a pioneer in the streaming industry. He's one of the oldest, not oldest streamers as an age, but like the person who's been doing it the longest. He also pioneered and was because of his work with Twitch in the early days that we have things like super chats, things like that, and also kind of just he kind of set the format for how to like interact with the community and whatnot. And unfortunately, he passed away to suicide this week, just due to the fact that he suffered from manic depression. So he was, he would go through crazy bouts of like highs and lows and highs and lows. And there was an event that kind of probably ended up triggering it with just a number of people in the chat stream, like, egging him on and insulting and stuff. And sometimes it's done. Sometimes people say these things, as a joke, and they're just meaning to like rile, like you would rile with your best friend, right? You call them like a dummy or, whatever, that kind of stuff. It's like, you're doing it out of fun, right? And you don't actually mean anything, hurtful or, derogatory by it. It's just playful banter. And this is unfortunately, like, on the outset when you're reading it in chat, that doesn't always like translate well, right? Like it doesn't always move, and it doesn't always work that way. Now there were some, I would say a fair bit of people who also meant it, and so it was really kind of depressing to watch and see everything. And and bipolar disorder is really rough. Ash and I shared a little bit yesterday about how we've had to deal with this a little bit too. We had Max Derritt on. He's been on this show once in the past as well, and he has a podcast every week that deals with some mental illness and mental difficulties, and it's like this kind of stuff is something where you can't always catch it, so you do what you can when you can. We want to just kind of like give off a solemn nod to the man, because he was a pioneer. The way that streaming works right now wouldn't be around, right? You wouldn't have emotes, you wouldn't have little activatable icons because of, I mean you may have, but this was the person who pioneered those things and really like worked with the Twitch team to get this stuff running on the Twitch platform so that it could end up getting run on all these other platforms. So it's just something that we want to kind of throw out there and say, hey, we know we know this happened, and we hope that obviously, it doesn't happen again. But if you ever need help, it's always good to just kind of go out there and ask for it. And again, Wreckful was, he did a lot of like, it was mostly a Blizzard streamer. But it doesn't change the fact that he was a pioneer in the industry, and that we have the ability to do this podcast because of people like him. And it's good to remember the vigils are still going on. I hopped into a couple of games. There's a couple of games where they, especially in MMOs, where they go, people are still holding vigils, parking their characters at a church or something like that, and kneeling in solidarity. And so that's been really, really amazing to see how the positivity of the community has caught up. And we just want to say that we're really thankful for all the positivity that we get here. We don't actually have to deal with very much negativity from this community, and that's a really great thing. And we hope that that's always the way that it is, because even people like will always support each other, and all of our discords are are pretty good places for most of our community fans. Almost like literally all of our community fans. I think I've only ever had to ban 2 people on our server, so it's considering the thousands of people that hang out with us, that's pretty awesome. So thanks a ton, guys, because we really appreciate it.
Yes, and you always have a community. Everyone here in the chat and everywhere always have a community to turn to, and always, if you need to talk to someone, talk. Don't wait. It always gets work. So always try and solve things head on. It's for the best. Now, going back to last week, we had a lot of stuff regarding Cyberpunk 2077. There were people who were obviously playing the game, sharing more stuff about it, and we had a lot of interesting interviews, especially with Pavev, who talked a lot about characters and their behavior. But before that, I've seen a lot of people talking in the chat about removed or changed features, so I just want to get that out of the way. So Techie class hasn't been removed completely, but the skills are still there. They're probably going to be adjusted and changed. So the skill tree itself is a hybrid one, so it doesn't matter anyway. You will be able to either go for the class you want to create by using all of those different abilities. You won't be restricted in any way. What was the next thing? Was wall running. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, Sinister had a question. He's like, is there a difference between the removed wall running and the wall hanging? We don't think that there was a difference between the two, so it's the same thing.
Wall running was never was a feature.
Yeah,
wall running was a rumor. A rumor that some people took as the real thing, but it never was a feature. And it's quite absurd because the main structures of Night City are the mega buildings. How the fuck do you want to climb the mega building? I mean, it really makes no sense to have this feature in Cyberpunk 2077 for the verticality. Who would climb such vertical buildings on the outside? And some people commented, then if you can't climb walls, what do you want verticality for? Elevators and stairs. The thing about verticality is that you have inside the map more maps for every floor of the building you get in. That doesn't mean you need to get from the outside. You can do it from the inside using, elevators and stairs like the normal people.
Yes.
I think they had wall. Obviously, they showed it in the 48-minute demo, right, with the mantis blades. And I remember way back in 2018, they only mentioned that you'd be able to do those on certain walls in certain small sections. So realistically, what they removed wasn't that huge. It's not like you were able to climb buildings like MadQueen was saying. But it was just
I like to answer because people are saying, MadQueen, so what's the demo again? No, this is the hanging in from a wall with the mantis blades is not climbing. It's a different ability. One thing, because when V does that in the demo, she doesn't move. She's just standing there. She doesn't go up. She doesn't go to the sides. She just put the mantis blades inside the wall, and that's everything that she could do. They never showed that she could do anything else on the walls. Then people from this speculated about the possibility of being able to use the mantis blades to climb. But this was speculation. It was a rumor. We never saw V doing anything in a wall with the mantis blades apart from getting them inside and without moving.
Yes.
I think, I've heard a lot. I've read some really, really dumb articles over the last few days about this. Just read one now that basically made me almost blow a gasket, because it's like again, they're quoting things as oh, this was the most anticipated feature. I'm pretty sure the whole swapping around your junk is probably is far more anticipated than this one. And where this comes from, again, it's this was never confirmed. It was talked about. It's something that people like to do, but from just a gameplay perspective, it's not actually a good ability. It's not actually something that is actually useful in most actual combat scenarios where you're dealing with this kind of a world. It's like Ash and I were talking about how one of the games that we have, one of our favorite games is Jedi Knight Academy, and you could wall run in that. but it was really difficult, but you could do it. And all it did was made it so that you were a really good target for firing weapons at, which would be the same process here, because it's like, do you want to run up behind cover and then like pop out and, you know, eviscerate somebody, or do you want to run up on a wall where you're a clear visible target by pretty much everybody with a weapon? And I've never understood the concept of like why people were excited for this, because it just sounded to me like it was an idiotic, like.
But I think it was mostly for stealth, right?
Yeah.
You could get on the walls and get behind people and get up top. Like when they showed it, those two guys were not even looking at you, right? You're up on that
No,
wall.
but that's the wall hanging, and that's, as far as we know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's still in, right?
Well, the way I understood it is that part was removed.
Yeah.
Because that was essentially the wall running that they showed, right? Because she does this little animation at the beginning where she like gets to that spot where she's able to hang.
Runs up a bit.
Yeah. That's what I understood, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I still haven't. I'm still not confirmed on this stuff, so it's been kind of like.
Well, I understood a
weird.
completely different thing, because when people is complaining about this applied to the verticality, and that's
which we know that's not.
Yeah,
I'm super confused with that.
Changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it still is a little confusing, but it's like I don't see the, like, wall running seems like wall running is a pointless ability that I have absolutely no interest in whatsoever. Like, again, it really doesn't make sense. It's just it's good for like cinematography. That's about it.
Well, there are a ton of other mobility options too. We were talking about before. You still got the dash, the double jump. You know, you can throw the Korenzikov in there, so you can still play as a cyber ninja if this has been removed. It's not a huge hit, and to be honest, I think it would have been a pain in the ass to implement properly. I don't think it would have added too much to the gameplay loop of being the cyber ninja.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, from the gameplay perspective, you will still, as Neon said, have that double jump through augmentations. As we've seen the B-roll gameplay in that container scene when we kind of jumps above that Maelstrom guy. And I'm sure that there will be an option to maybe take them out with Mantis Blades from air as you're going down, if people were referring to that, as they were referring in the 45-minute demo. Yeah, so that was that. Also with the subway metro system, it was never actually confirmed. It was only it appeared hinted now and then, kinda.
A lot of people pretty much assumed it just because we saw it in the 2018 trailer, and that was like in-engine footage, right? So, and then they also had some of the wallpapers and the art with V actually on the subway. So I think people just jumped to the conclusion, but it technically was never really confirmed.
And this is one of these gameplay features that just do not they just don't last. Like they don't hold your attention. It's the same, because it's the same thing as a flight path, right? In a game, you get on a griffin and you fly from point A to point B, and the first time you're like, wow, look at that, look at this, oh look, there's a thing over there, oh look at that, oh hey, I can see a player down there, oh it's so cool. And then you do that the second time and you're like, cool. And you do that the third time and you're like, oh god damn, another 2 minutes of this stupid flight path. All right, I'm gonna go get a drink. It's like third, fourth, fifth, eighth, ninth, 100th time you're like, oh my god, I wish I could just like port here faster. It's like, it's not something that it's a mechanic that for some reason it's a flashy mechanic that I find that that is really popular with like people who review a game for like 4 hours and then never play again. It's really popular with those people, but I don't know a single gamer who's like, oh man, I cannot wait for the next, like, you know, getting into a metro car and watching the same city drive past me for like the 15th time. That's just so cool. Like, that's not there. That's never there.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm sure it makes the city feel so small when you're able to just cut through everything, right? If you were to get on the subway and just cut through the entire city to the biggest points of interest, it kind of defeats the purpose almost of exploring and getting around, you know, naturally.
Yeah, I think Paris said that there will be terminals, in a sense, throughout the city that you can use to fast travel with. So that's kind of a different option. So yeah, some of these things are great for cinematic feeling, because I think I entered the subway in GT4, I think 2 times. And from the cinematic side, from like let's say immersion side, yeah, cool. But at the same time, it's not like something I'm gonna cry about, because it's removed, because it's a small feature in a sense. From a detail perspective of the city, yeah, it looks cool. But it's not a feature or something that a lot of people will use. They on a like always. It's like I would rather drive a Quadro than go to the subway, to be honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would rather drive, right, if they had the choice. Plus, that I feel like that the subway thing would be a huge thing to implement, right? That'd be
Yeah,
a massive, massive undertaking.
yeah,
Would be well. I mean, it's like it's part of the tech that's just not available right now. Like we don't have the ability to like have when you're sitting on a subway and you travel through another subway station, and you're going the opposite way or whatever. You're not stopping there. You see literally hundreds of sometimes you'll see hundreds of people just waiting. It depends on where you are in the world, but sometimes there's thousands of people waiting to get on the subway, and it's like we don't have the ability to render that at that speed. And again, I'm not trying to like suck up to CDPR here. This is one of these things from a developer like programming side of things. It's incredibly complex and also highly pointless, because it's like you're never going to do anything with that. Like you're never gonna like go out of your way to alter everything, and suddenly it's like, oh wow, look at all the cool scenery that I'm seeing. Your player is going to react to that a handful of times, and then they're going to use the fast travel option. Because again, we've seen it in Fallout New Vegas. There was a tram system that you could get on and move across the map with, and I took it like twice. Every time after that, it was just fast travel.
totally forgot about that.
And I mean, and again, it's like you look back at like the videos and the content that was created for that game, and how many of it featured the subway? Like nothing, literally nothing. And I think here, like even if you made the subway full of like interesting conversations you could spy on, or interesting things that you could look at, or some role play stuff, you might get, it's a lot of people would get really bored of it really quickly, and would just feel like they're feel like this is not a fun aspect of the game, and it's like why bother? I think that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, I would rather
Yeah.
invest the resources into something else that's actually gonna be a huge. Because keep in mind, if developers are working on a subway system, that means they cannot work properly on other things. And if you focus too much time on a feature which is not that important, and you disregard the feature which is important, you create a double problem, and it serves no one.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
they were utilizing real city designers and builders, right? They had them on the team. So they're the world that they've implemented is still gonna feel, organic. You're still gonna be able to explore it without the subway. The subway is okay, people wanted it, it would have fit in the world, but is it a huge deal? Not really.
yeah, yeah. Kind of the same with car customization. At first, yeah, I'm not gonna lie and say that I wasn't completely not disappointed. That's not the word I'm seeking. But I was like, oh, there's no character customization, but it is what it is. But as an alternative, they offered something else, to have rare cars that you actually have to really work hard to get. And one plus in all of that is that they can focus on actually designing interiors and making each car unique in its own way through interior and exterior. And that's what they said. They have a separate team for vehicles that are designing these things to make them look
Yeah.
different, to make them feel different and drive different, and etc. etc.
And we've seen examples of what the cars look like inside. They all look radically different, right? Because they have the 4 different styles that they're abiding by, and yeah, they look great inside. I would have liked to like maybe swap out the vehicle, sorry, the wheels and stuff like that for stats reasons, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
I think this is one of these things that we can see them expand on later in the future. But again, coming back to the development side of things, with this engine and the way that they are building this, you can't really have a Lego system when it comes to the cars. Like swapping out suspension, wheels, back fins, like exhaust ports, different speeds, like changing altering the mechanics of the car as well. This is something that it's just I mean, I never expected them to be able to manage to squeeze this in on release. If it's very popular, and if this becomes one of the primary like modded systems for the game down the road, then I suspect quite strongly that we'll see them pop it in an expansion at some point. But for now, it's just like the way that the systems are designed. Each car is built individually, and its suspension, its ride, its drive, how it feels, all of that is different from vehicle to vehicle to vehicle. And trying to insist or like create something that doesn't have that would cheapen the experience a little bit, at the same time of just needlessly making it complex for a system that most people are not going to use that much. But we'll see, because again, what aspects of this game become popular, we don't know yet. Like with the brain dance and with some of this other stuff, it's like these mechanics may or may not become like very popular or not, and we just don't know.
I just want to say one thing. X-Rain, it's not defending CDPR and everything. It's having an opinion which you think we're defending someone. Why would I defend someone just because of that? Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't have any financial gain from them, and why would I even do that blindly? So if we talk about something, I'm not talking about to suck up to CDPR or any one of that. If you've been following my channel for a while, if there is some things that I don't like, I will talk about them. So it's talking and agreeing with something from a logical perspective does not mean blindly defending CDPR. It's talking about it.
LastKnown, do you want us to quickly segue into third person camera again, because we can do that to prove how much we disagree with some certain design decisions, that we've made it very clear directly to the people that come on the show from the company that we didn't like. Not all of us are in agreement with this decision. So. No. Again, anybody who says that we're pandering is like, no, because one of their biggest decisions was
the subject that really grinds my gears. So you have companies like Electronic Arts that does like horrible things, and you have big gaming outlets defending microtransactions, and hey, everything is okay. But whatever the project that does that people disagree, not even a thing as predatory transactions. I mean, not something as great as that. Something as stupid as removing one feature among literally thousands, and people jump on them like it was the end of the world. Why this double standard?
No.
Yeah, because and this is a really shocking thing. It's like I've seen people, some YouTubers that I long time ago used to watch and respect their opinion on. They'll get up and they'll defend the concept of predatory microtransactions aimed at children, despite now the fact that the British House of Lords and their review on the process basically said that this is egregious and horrendous and must be addressed immediately. And yet, for some odd reason, these people, well, making games are really expensive and it's really hard to do. And you can't make a game now that actually is fun without piling in microtransactions just cause. It's like they'll defend that, but you're like, oh, you know what? They cut wall running from the game. Oh, burn the witch. It's like, excuse me?
Also, another thing, I mean, in every single piece of gameplay that we've seen so far, there was a legend on the top that clearly said, this is a work in progress, doesn't represent the final game. I believe that this cannot be made more clear. They take something up. I mean, if the change was, I don't know, putting microtransactions in the game when they promised they wouldn't, I would understand the general angriness at it.
Of course.
But we knew that they were going to change features. What's the big deal about it? I mean, maybe you like this feature and you feel bad because they didn't put it. I can understand that. What I don't understand is crucifying the company like they made a promise. No, the only promise they made is that this is a work in progress and things may change.
Yes.
And I
And
mean,
they
the
still
next
they
thing,
still have that on their most recent Night City Wire too, so they're gonna have that up until the end probably, right?
Yeah,
well,
they're going to do more changes. I mean, the game is out in November.
and they're still tweaking things. And I mean, so one of the things on the list, do we want to move on to this one now? Is that I'm really, I am actually legitimately like sad about, because I was really looking forward to this one, was the Flathead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
People
So
are talking about everything else except the techie, which is like one of the bigger features that
Yeah.
was quote unquote cut, right?
Well, was I honestly, I'm not totally sure what happened here. Was it cat, or was it integrated with the gameplay in a different way?
the techie, so the techie skills were
Yes.
mostly integrated because there's a lot of overlap, right? Because
Mhm.
it's not, this isn't as deep as an actual pen and paper tabletop game of Cyberpunk. So there's, when you're doing that, the journalist class, the rocker boy class, the techie class, and the a couple of the other classes, they are all have their really important things that they need to do within the confines of the pen and paper, the tabletop experience. But when you're doing a game that's actiony, that's a single player type experience with a single main protagonist and maybe a second like companion character, you don't run into that scenario of needing those extra things. So there was a lot of generalized overlap, and so they've integrated it. Most of the techie skills that were not duplicates, or essentially came down to being a duplicate thing, most of them were fed into the techie, or fed into the Netrunner class. Yeah, but the Flathead, the actual companion for the Flathead, that's the biggest thing that I look at and I went, oh man,
Yeah.
that sucks, because that was the one thing that kind of really made the techie class actually like, an actual techie, because I see the Netrunner as more of like the stealthy, like, debuffer, or like, hacker type. The techie to me was like the character who had like the ability to like call in pets, or to like utilize like, more vehicles and armored stuff, like I was anticipating that we would actually at some point get like one of those exoskeletons for the techie class, but that is a lot of like extra work that I think they just kind of ran out on time for, because I mean, that's a lot of additional mechanics for a game to feature just one class.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people
Right.
is talking a lot about customization, and this is something that I find especially amusing, because people is talking about lack of customization in the game, in the classic way of customizing your experience, which is customizing visuals. You want to customize your car, you want to customize these things. When we're talking about a game, when you can customize your story.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a big thing to remember, and you put it out quite clearly. Is like the reminder again. This is not a racing game. This is not Grand Theft Auto first and foremost. There's some things that overlap with this within this game, but they've always said this is an RPG first. You're not playing this game for excellent top tier SMG gunplay. You're playing it for the story and the RPG factor of the game, not for not so that you could develop a racing game and race around Night City 24/7 and have a collection of like 50, 80 cars. It's like, while that's good to have and that's something that can be built into the world, it's not what most people are looking for.
Yeah.
Period.
And the techie still exists in the game. It's just part of the story loop. It's not part of the gameplay loop.
Yeah, because the journalists, the media, the Ripper Docs, all of those classes still exist within the game. They're still there. It's just they're not playable by the main protagonist via this story, because they had to narrow it down at some point. I would have loved, and I still am, my preferred way to go about this, and I really hope that they do this for the multiplayer, is I really want that tabletop experience of like, when we're getting into a game, it's like we can bring all of those classes in and have that experience of doing a mission or doing like a very difficult thing, with having a media class, with having a rocker boy, with having a ripper doc, and then having a solo. That's something that I want to see in the multiplayer, and I'll be very upset if the multiplayer just turns into one or two different builds of like the solo, and it's just a battle arena essentially, right? Like that would be incredibly disappointing to me personally.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think we have Paris in the chat. Welcome, Paris, and thank you, Senegos, for $2 donation. Greetings, programs. Yeah. There's and look at this. There's a lot of games that you played. Everyone in the chat, like God of War, whatever. And a lot of these games have more enclosed development, meaning they don't share a lot of info. Honestly, Cyberpunk has been sharing a lot of info. They have to do it, of course, for commercial and marketing reasons, but they were really going in depth on the progression of the game. You would be surprised how many features get cut during development of many games that you never knew that even existed or were planned or whatever. It's a very normal thing which happens, and I get it. You have every right. For everyone that like, yeah, sure, you're disappointed that it's not a feature anymore. Of course, it's your right to do, but to go full angry on it, I never understood it, because it's not like a big thing. Yeah, if they implemented microtransactions all of a sudden, then yes, that's bad, but it's not that.
You have to realize how ambitious CDPR is from the get-go too, right? They want to put everything in the kitchen sink in the game at first, and then so it's only natural that they scale down, and some things get cut, some things might get added. In The Witcher 3, how many things were cut? I think I saw a comment in the chat that said, if you were to compare what's been cut so far on Cyberpunk versus The Witcher was a lot more, and that we all know how that game turned out, right? So
yeah, especially when it comes to like the biggest thing with The Witcher was the little downgrade in graphics.
True, yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, that was like a feature like which caused, and yeah, at that time it was like, oh, what the game is gonna be about. And when the game came out, it had its flaws, of course, in some areas, but it genuinely was a great game, in my opinion, my personal opinion. And because of that, because of The Witcher, because of The Witcher 2, because of The Witcher 1, that a lot of people skip, I can see why I have higher trust in this company than any other to create a good game. They still have to they're still yet to disappoint me. So yeah, I think yeah, Witcher was buggy and overrated. Yeah, sure. sure it was. Yeah. Meanwhile, that's what I said in my previous CDPR video. Being one of the most famous companies right now, being a company which is known for good things, if you make one thing which is bad, it multiplies by 100%. Like if EA cut something from the game, like, yeah, sure, it's EA. It happens. It's just a normal thing in every game. But there is one feature I want to talk about, which is really interesting, and that's body language. We had a interview on Game Informer. I'm going to link it a bit later, where Pavel Sasko talks a lot about body language and characters, and from that perspective, that's what really is one of the best features, because you will have to pay close attention to the body language of characters, of some characters you are interacting with. So they might try to deceive you, they might try to do something that they'll say something, then they'll do something else. So what do you think about that?
Sorry.
Oh, no.
I remember when LA Noire came out. This was one of the main features of the game, that you had to investigate and you had to pay attention to the body language of the NPCs you were talking to find out if they were lying.
Yeah.
And this multiplied this inside an RPG can be incredibly interesting.
True, especially because each and every single one of those characters has their own agenda, probably, and it might not be towards you. And one thing which definitely increased that, because at first I didn't know that body language was actually going to be a thing in Cyberpunk. I thought it's going to be more based on like the options you have in the dialogue menu, but to have that on top of that, it's really cool. And plus it's a dynamic sort of a dialogue system where you can do action while you're talking to someone like the Maelstrom Royce, you can just shoot him in the head.
Yeah, I love that part of the trailer. I love that part of the trailer. That's what I wanted to do since the first time that I saw that demo, like shoot him in the head. But I believe that it's very, very interesting how this adds layers of complexity to dealing with NPCs, because we are so used that in fictional narratives, people always say the truth, quote unquote. I mean, not always, but it's like super obvious when people are lying and super obvious when people are saying the truth. And the fact that you can put liars to constantly second guess what you're doing, I guess that the game is not going to be especially rewarding with people that trust easily on other people, because this is Night City. And how they're going to develop that can be very interesting, because obviously people is not black or white. People can do good things and at the same time do horrible things. People can be so kind to you, and then when you turn your back, stab you in your back. And everybody's looking for the interest. And what is people interested in? I believe it's going to be one of the most important things to find out to deal with NPCs appropriately.
Yes, and they also said like the body language and those sort of features, they won't be random. They're actually gonna be crafted to make sense. So it's not like every character is gonna be randomly like lying to your sis, telling you the truth. Only a couple, not couple, they didn't specify the numbers, but they will actually think about how to properly implement it so it makes sense in situations. That it's not like, oh god damn it, that was random, because
you're able to free look during those cutscenes, right? So you can see additional context from all the NPCs in the back. So it's not even the body language or just the person that you're talking to straight up, right? It's the people around him, right? Maybe the guy in the back is sketching out because they're about to do something, and maybe you catch on to that. That also plays into it. I think they mentioned in some of the people in the previews that your screen was only locked at one particular moment, and that CDPR said this would only happen 4 or 5 times throughout the entire game.
Yeah, you can walk and talk with NPCs. I mean, if they want to walk. But that sort of having that dynamic, how would I say, conversation really, I don't know, for me that's a feature that I like for a game like this, for an RPG like this, not a sandbox but an RPG. And people assume that I hate GTA because we compare it. No, I have hundreds of hours in that game. Trust me.
It's just a different kind of game.
Yeah, just a different
Like
game.
we said the other day with Legacy, one day it will be the other way around. This is a Cyberpunk. GTA 6 will be compared with Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
Whenever they want to release GTA 6, I know there's the rumor that they're working on it. I don't want to participate in this rumor.
I'm sure they'll have the questions like, why can't you swap out your junk and just install new stuff? Where's the rotating like the rotating like lighted up one with the moving pistons and all that stuff? I'm trying not to say anything I shouldn't, but it's like where's all that stuff in the next GTA? And GTA is going to be standing around looking at each other like, oh man, we're in a bit of a bind here. So yeah, no, I think a lot of people that are comparing this to GTA are really comparing the wrong thing. It's like there's some similarities, and I think that's where that ends.
Yeah. See a lot of discussion about Jackie. I think the Jackie death scene, yeah, for some people, yeah, it was a bit spoilery, but at the same time they showed you through that shock what can happen if you make bad decisions. I think that was very effective. And technically, Jackie does not die if you make good decisions, I believe. Hope
well,
so.
that's probably still part of the prologue as well, too, right? Because they mentioned that everything that they showed at Night City Wire was part of the prologue. And the gig trailer had the 2019 CGI sequence at the end with Dex and Johnny and stuff like that, right? So that's still part of the prologue, as we know.
I remember when that trailer came out, we were discussing, because we thought that they were entering Arasaka premises, and we were right.
Yeah.
You were right.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I mean, if I were to compare this game to anything, it would be more to Deus Ex on a larger scale rather than anything else. But still,
Well,
comparing games like, it's a slippery
I mean,
slope.
it seems to me that sometimes when people compare two games, it's only looking at the visuals of it, like the parts of the gameplay that can be easily seen. Like yeah, I can drive, I can customize the junk, but there are plenty of mechanics inside a game that if they are well done, you are not seeing them. Like this way of organizing the dialogues, for instance. This is super organic. Nobody's contemplated this as a gameplay feature when it actually is. And it's very different from your standard video game where dialogues tend to be very static and you cannot perform actions at the same time you talk. I don't mean that this has never been before, but it has never seen before, but it's not the standard. And things like that, there are plenty of things like that in Cyberpunk. And these are also features, and these are also difficult to implement and difficult to innovate on them.
Yeah. And of course, they're trying to work on every single feature you saw, like driving, like shooting. Of course, they're still optimizing that. They don't want to fall short on that. Of course, they're doing their best to make it as it is. But the first and foremost goal is to have this game be an RPG first. And when you have, sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm done.
I was gonna say this build that the previewers were playing was a month old, was it not? And they still have 4 months, and they said that there were features that they didn't have in the game, like there was a Forza 4 driving build or something like that they hadn't had in the game. So
one of the things that annoyed me the most is that I know enough about kind of some of the things that people had to agree to. One of them was a clear statement saying, hey, there are areas of the game that are turned off. No NPCs, no story, no quests. This is turned off so that you don't spoil stuff for yourself later on, because we only want people reporting up to the pre-chip part, like reporting that pre-chip gameplay, essentially the glorified tutorial. Post-chip, like once you get Johnny in your head, that's a completely different world, and they are being very careful what they put out there. So it was made very clearly and aware in these letters and emails that these people received that, you know, there are parts of the game that are turned off. What did I hear from a bunch of journalists right from the get-go? You know, it seemed I'm really worried because I arrived in one area of the city and there was nothing there. There was no NPCs. All of these doors were like closed with these like giant like, you know, things that it looked like they were just kind of dropped in there to prevent me accessing this building. Like, did you read the letter? Did you read the letter at all? Like,
was
just
there like
some
police,
big block?
there like police blockades that were like stopping you from going to
Yeah,
different?
go into places. Now, again, I haven't played it, so I can't say exactly how it was done. But this is stuff that happens in games. You know, last week or week before I raged about another game where I'm in there and some journalist comes into the Discord. This Discord is for press and game devs only. He comes in and he goes, guys, you know, I just can't get over seeing that pink blob in the game. What is this thing for? Like, is there something wrong with my graphics card? No, that's a placeholder graphic, you twit. Like, you're supposed to be somebody who knows about this. Like, come on, like, wake up. Like, did you just start your job today? Like, have you never, ever played a game that was like, you know, a year away from release? Like, this stuff is pretty common. And again, see it here. A bunch of the people that they picked, not a bunch, a small few of the people that they picked are like privately going around saying, you know, I'm really concerned about the game because I just walked into an area and there was nothing there. It's like, good God. Of course there was nothing there. It was turned off. It was made very clear in the paper that you signed to say that yes, you would not talk about this or highlight this because, you know, it's off for a reason. It's not that there's nothing there. It's that it's been turned off so you don't spoil yourself. Like, good God, like
Yeah, but being fair isn't going to give them
Yeah.
clicks. They gotta get
No,
they gotta get
no.
their headline out there that
Well,
says.
I think I don't remember seeing an article where they covered this directly. It was like inside talk. It's like they're like
Ah, I got you.
so their editor or somebody looked at it and said, yeah, this isn't supposed to be in here, and either deleted it from their profile or something. Because again, it's like I don't understand how, like, I hear this from people in the industry. It's like good, like, it's just your job, like your everyday job. Like, you're not some, like, gamer. You're not somebody who's coming at this from a hobby perspective or from like a content consuming perspective. You're somebody who's supposed to know about this stuff. When you see a blue or a pink floating ball with a question mark on it, if you've been doing your job, you know that that's a placeholder graphic.
They should
When you
just
see two red lines across the screen and an X, that means that this is where a cinematic is supposed to play. Like, again, common stuff that most people can figure out. Apparently, unless you went to school for this for like 4 years, then that completely goes over your head for some odd reason, and it really irritates me. I'm super irritated by it. I don't know if you can tell.
Okay, chill, man, chill.
I know.
They should start slapping work in progress on like every single NPC's forehead. So like,
But even that doesn't work.
Okay, chill.
Yeah.
I'd like to answer a question in the chat from Baku's Mango that said, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you saying how you didn't think they could fit vehicle customization in it. Isn't actually that difficult, blah blah blah. Everything in game design is hard. I mean, why the fuck do you think they crunch? Comments like this are very disrespectful to the hard work of developers. Nothing in a game is easy, nothing.
Yeah, it's also not very...
That they do it with such mastery that it seems easy, maybe, but that doesn't mean that it is. They crunch for a fucking reason, and this is because doing games is not easy.
I need to just cover it because, again, this really irritates me. And I'm not trying to get after you, the listener, but no, car customization is not easy. In this game, each vehicle is its own model. It has its own textures. It has its own mesh. That mesh is not something that you can just drag and drop things on. Like, your character, you're dragging on a new top or a new piece of armor or something like that. This system is, if it's not created for this system from the ground up, it's just not there. That includes... sometimes you can do paint jobs relatively easily. I mean, that's just the outer, like, that's just the outer layer of it. But, like, when we're talking customization, we're talking like real customization, like just changing the rims from just regular old, like, fancy rims to like spinning rims. That is not something that can just snap your finger and do in this particular case, because these are uniquely designed models from the ground up. You can't just slap on something and have it work in the same way. It doesn't work that way in this particular case. Now, could they have, completely changed this? Could they have gone with like a Lego setup where you in a lot of Need for Speed games, you have the wheel chassis frame, and then you just keep on stacking stuff on top of that until you have a completed car. You can, but there are game engines that spend 80% of the resources on those cars. Like, there's a reason why there's a Need for Speed doesn't have a game that has come out where you're driving in regular traffic with thousands of other cars on the roads all at the same time. You don't have that because nobody has made that technology available. So please don't, like, again, I'm not trying to be insulting, but that there is no way that anybody could make this system. Like, the closest we've gotten to it is a handful of games that 80% of the focus of the game is driving. There's not even that full level customization that some people are suggesting. There's not even that in Grand Theft Auto. They still haven't, years, what's it, 7 years? They finally started to add some of that concept to it. Again, it's just not something that's possible if you're looking at it and going, well, they're just being lazy because they didn't add the ability to swap out the frame or do a lift kit. It's like, could they do a paint job? Sure. Can they do like alter the wheels and the suspension on the vehicle? Can they add out a completely different mechanical engine for it? No, 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 not without running their head into a wall full blast, because it's just not, the tech is just not there. Period. It can get there, but it's like we're talking like late next generation for having a system that's as deep as Cyberpunk is, and also having a car customization system that is, that deep. It's taken 7 years for a comparative game to add some level on that, and the graphics are not even nearly as complex, and they don't have nearly a complex NPC system as Cyberpunk does. So again, you're looking and asking for something that just doesn't exist. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course, like, don't think, like, the viewers, don't think that it's forbidden to criticize or to talk about and provide feedback to CDPR. Of course, you're allowed, but you're open to talk. If you think some things like, oh, I think this was okay, I think this wasn't okay, it's normal, totally fine. But I've seen some comments of people actually insulting the devs and everything. Like, there is no reason for that. There is no point. Providing...
No one's holding a gun to your head making you play this game. Play something else.
And again, I'm not angry at the average gamer who doesn't know that the how the mesh system works when you're making a game. I'm absolutely not. That's not your job. I get annoyed with journalists who, that is their job. They're supposed to like take 5 to 10 hours to review that subject so that they can speak on it from an educated perspective. The average gamer is like, no, go ahead and ask these questions because they're important questions. And again, I understand why you want car customization in the game. And I'm telling you right now, if this game lasts for 7 years, you're going to get it. For sure. I can almost promise you that, because modders will probably make it happen relatively quickly, but you're not going to be able to play it on the baseline Xbox once they get in there and start doing that stuff, because the baseline Xbox isn't, and PlayStation, it's just not going to last.
Yeah.
So
we have another donation. Thank you, Black Gamer, for €5. Hey, dude, wanna know, do you think they will cancel a lot of gameplay features still released because impossible to optimize? Now, I don't think they will cancel a lot of gameplay features. Of course, there could be changes, but I doubt that it's gonna be something really, really big. And sometimes it's that you cannot make it to work. It either takes a lot of time or it takes a lot of resources from the company, which can be spent into something else, which let's say is a more important feature, and more a feature that you use more constantly throughout the game. So yeah, it's always like that. You have games that remove certain things, add certain things, and throughout the years, a lot of that has been actually done internally, where you don't know what they changed. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So there could be more changes, of course, for as long as the text on the top is saying that work in progress. You're gonna have maybe changes. Maybe something will be removed. We don't know. We still have yet for the game to come out in November.
I'd like to add something to this, because the question specifically asked if what's the word? Optimization. If optimization is the reason why features are removed, because that's what I understand from the question. Optimization is one thing, and usually features are not removed for that. Optimization in the sense of optimizing the game for platforms. Obviously, optimizing, polishing the game for working. Yeah. You may be developing a feature and spend a lot of time developing a feature, and when you finish, you see it in, together with the rest of features, and you may think, doesn't work the way I thought it was going to work, and then remove it. And then later you add a different feature, and you think, oh, that feature that I removed the other time now looks well with this other thing. And that's how development works. You add, you remove, you add, you remove, you add, you remove. That's one of the reasons why a lot of developers rather not giving a lot of information about their games while they are developing, because the general public believes that this is a linear thing, that they start, they finish, and they always go in the same direction. But things are not like that because games are massive, and you have to take a lot of decisions that maybe once you see the game together, because you're working on a game and for 5 years you may be working with your imagination only because you're not seeing all the pieces together. And when you see them together is when you say, well, with this doesn't work, this we should change it. And yes, it's important always have in mind that games are an iterative process and things can change. And the changes doesn't mean that they don't want to develop something or that they can't because they don't have the resources. It can mean an insane amount of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was also a question about ray tracing. That's basically the rendering technique where they can actually generate the image by tracing light. That's why they trace the ray of the light and make it look realistic and how it bounces off of things. And there's various other things which I'm not really well versed in. So yeah.
Talking about criticizing things, I believe that it's time that we talk about what I personally believe that is the worst thing that we saw so far in the last gameplay. Katanas.
Yes.
Melee weapons.
Yes.
For me, that part of the gameplay was too clunky. I didn't especially like the animations. They didn't look very realistic. Also, I understand that there's an added problem in showing a good animation and a good mechanic for melee weapons when you're on first person. But I'm not convinced at all.
True. There was in that B-roll there was a small snippet of using the mantis blade, and it was kind of funny. I was just remove the head. But yeah, like for me, like when I've seen the fist fighting,
Yeah.
it was okay when it comes to feedback. I didn't like the numbers in the middle. Like I really don't like the numbers, the damage numbers in the middle. I get why they're there if you can actually like see it count and for people who actually want to have them, of course. But I think I don't know. It's like it felt a little bit clunky when you do something when you're attacked. Like it almost like there is no motion.
I think they really dialed up the auto aim because I was reading a couple of previews and they said that auto aim was like super strong, so it might look a little janky on screen because of that. But yeah, I kind of agree with the melee. Just overall, it didn't look.
Just remember that, I mean, I think we've been confirmed now that UI stuff like that is optional, and the hard mode or like the hardest mode of the game does remove most of those, I believe. So
yeah,
take that as a rumor for now because that's what I remember hearing, but I don't think that's been confirmed. But I do remember hearing that not.
That was straight from the UI designer.
Yeah. There's multiple things in the UI that are like on, you can turn off or on, and I would imagine that we can turn off auto aim. I really don't like it when the gameplay is on with auto aim. I really don't like that. It's janky, like you said. It creates kind of a janky thing. But again, this is something that is industry standard. So every first person shooter that incorporates auto aim into their system showcases it with that auto aim turned on because it supposedly creates a smoother experience for the watcher. So
for the watcher or the player?
For the person watching the because it's footage, right?
I
It's
suppose,
B-roll
but
footage. Yeah.
Yeah, but they were
Not
still forced
for the
to
player.
use. Yeah, they were forced to use a controller, right? I don't think anybody could. Could people use mouse and keyboard? I think maybe the people that were streaming it could. No?
No, it was turned off. So, and there was nobody who was streaming it.
Well, they were streaming it via GeForce Now to people who couldn't make it to the events, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, yes, yeah. No, they were sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. No, the footage that's all been released, all of the footage that's been released has been with that auto aim and gamepad. Like you can tell just from the smoothness of the panning and stuff that goes on. It's like that's
Right.
obviously a controller, right? It's not a mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, and I really wish they actually Like obviously they're going to work on it, try and make it as best as they can. But I think for a lot of people, I think melee would be a really viable gameplay choice, a character choice. Because melee weapons, melee builds are a thing here, and we still have to see. So far, it definitely needs work, and again, work in progress. So hopefully that's a bit more, I don't know, a little bit more smoothness in a sense, which of course can be optimized. But I also like hit registration in when I'm using melee weapons in a sense. When you strike and there's that really nice feedback to it and the way someone reacts to it. For me, that's something I like when I'm doing melee combat in a sense. But I don't know many games that I actually enjoyed melee combat in the first place. It's really difficult. I don't know. Maybe you know, Siv, more about that. It's really difficult to create a good melee system, especially from first person. It's really challenging.
For first person, the I think it's like Kingdom Come Deliverance is about the only one that offered something fairly unique. It's a matter
Shadow
Warrior as well.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that you have to realize is like when you're in a first person, when you're doing first person melee combat, there's a section of space between your character and that is in like another dimension of space. It's like when you run up to the wall and you can still see your weapons, like, moving up against the wall. Now, most games have this, not all games, but I'm just using some basic, like, explanation stuff. When you run up to a wall in a first-person melee game, same thing with a shooter, when you have your weapons out and you're pressing your character against the wall. So technically, they're, like, pressed up against the wall. You still see your weapons floating there. Unless they've added in like a clipping system where that the end of the weapon is as it is in like third person stuff, because it's weird when you're watching, when you're playing like COD or something and it's all in first person and you're watching other players like shoot, not everything always lines up perfectly, because when you're watching another character move around, because what they see is not what you see. And what you see is not what they see as far as that goes. So melee system makes it a little bit more worse because you have no peripheral vision and three-dimensional combat is essentially non-existent in the first person, how it's portrayed into the first person play. So there's a complexity that is there in most, like when you take games into third person and you're doing melee, you have full arcs, you have a peripheral, essentially a peripheral vision, and then you also have like three-dimensional stuff. And then when you incorporate like grapples and holds into it, like in like, say a Soul Calibur type game, and you're doing flips and stuff like that, that adds a level of complexity to the physical melee combat that you can't have in a first-person game, because your camera would just be like, literally tumbling, as you're doing a grapple and a hold and a flip or something like that. And you're holding, just like any wrestler, they do like a grapple and they do a toss, and then they grab the person's arm and they hold the person's body with their feet. It's like that just doesn't look entertaining when you're playing it from a first person perspective. And that's why I'm very much against a first person perspective being the only perspective. I like, my favorite games are where you have both, right? Like where you can swap between them at will, because that offers the best combination of the two worlds at the same time. But yeah, when you're doing this, like you just can't get that same level of depth of like feeling in that third person. So again, this is one of the scenarios where it's like, don't judge this game based off of the first person melee combat, because it's like there's nobody who can do it very much better than this, and what they have is pretty decent for the most part. I would give it, like, out of any first person melee type games, I would give it probably an 8 out of 10. It's like with the best one probably being like Kingdom Come Deliverance, but even that in comparison to like a third person melee combat game that has like, backflips, grapples, holds, the ability to attack backwards or something like that, that gets a 10 out of 10 for real combat, whereas compared to a first person combat scenario with the same kind of generalized like light melee combat light stuff that would never get more than a 5 in a direct comparison. But just because this is what we're dealing with, then there's not very much room to grow in that perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, not right now. But yeah, the melee combat from third person is always the best. First person is extremely
Dying Light has some good stuff, but it's not realistic at all. It's all like, it's all like this parkour thing that's really really exaggerated to the point where like you have to do it because that's how it works, and it works well for that game. Like it really does work well for that game, just as like the Kingdom Come combat system works really well for that game and how you're trying to incorporate it. But that is nowhere near what I would hope for eventually, is something that we'll see in the future when it comes to melee combat in games. I want to see grapples, I want to see holds, I want to see flips, and the I'll bring it up again. Jedi Knight Academy had the ability to when you're fighting with lightsabers to like do a backward stab, and like that's something that you can't really replicate that in a first person scenario. So there's no point in even trying or expecting that somebody could. So that's where you kind of have to step back and say, no, I'm not going to judge this game poorly based off of how the first person mechanics that are not really designed, they're not really good in that first person, because it's just not that field's, like it's just not that particular thing. Like Dying Light is never going to become the Dying Light style of mechanics is never going to become like the standard for the industry, because it's a sort of niche style in the way that it handles combat. It's very good, and again, the parkour system is really, like, if you enjoy that parkour, like, running stuff, like, it's very good for that, but it is not something that can hold a candle to the complexity of a third-person combat system, or in an actual real first-person perspective, in the form of like the Half-Life 2 Alyx, right? Half-Life 2 Alyx, there's no melee in it, but the weapon technology in there was mind-blowingly good for this first generation of like real like shooters designed for that from the ground up, and then published under like a AAA level. It's like that game really is going to set trends for the future, but it's not something that we can expect from currently existing first-person games without the confines of opening the door to VR, right? So there's that. So there's this big step of like extra complexity that like, again, it's like it limits you in a certain ways, and that's just the way it is. Because in a real scenario with melee, and even in some cases with shooters, like when you're doing like gunfu, right? Gunfu is something that I would expect to see in a Cyberpunk universe, but we don't get to do that here because, again, the limitations of the first person, and indeed the limitations of it being on a screen instead of being something that you can like dive into like a full dive or like a VR setup, can't replicate that. But that's what we want. That's where we're hopefully heading in 5 to 15 years from now. It's like we want to see that kind of evolution of that, moving towards that, because they would just, again, if you've never seen a good gun fu, and yes, that's right, Rinta Ru in the comments, gun fu is where it's like you're doing melee and blocking. Sometimes you're armed with like a weapon, like a melee weapon and a gun, or like you're just using two guns and you're like blocking and doing stuff with that. It's like, there's a couple of other examples for it, but it's like, it's really cool, it's really fun, and there's nothing more exciting than doing a gung fu type thing when you're actually doing it. But it's incredibly, yes, Equilibrium was the movie, right? Yeah, it was really solid. Like, that's the kind of experience that's going to be really, really cool, that's not going to hold a candle to somebody like, sniping at something. Like, sniping is like you're laying there and you're just shooting at essentially a two-dimensional view, right? It's like, that's what sniping experience is. But a gun fu experience, or like I want to see like a World War I like Bayonetta type mechanic too. Like, eventually that would be crazy crazy cool when you're like, you're literally diving in and out of like trenches, and you're fighting like with that like close quarter stuff. It's like that has some pretty cool stuff that you can expect to see, but we're not at that level of technology. So right now, you have to be happy with what you get, and in this case what we have is we have a pretty decent system. Like I said, probably like first person melee combat, probably an 8 out of 10. Like, but it's not my preferred melee combat. I would prefer like melee combat that's akin to like a Street Fighter or a Soul Calibur, because of all of the different like combat stuff that you can do that you can't do when you're glued to their eyes, and you also can't really do without having that like a system that's really designed from the ground up for that. So yeah.
There's also two comments I want to answer. The first one was that bullet path ricochet stuff is unrealistic. Yes, technically, yes, every bullet is not going to ricochet in the same direction. That's impossible. But at the same time, this game is not aiming for that sort of realism. Of course, there's always levels of realism you take with your games. Let's say if we take first-person shooters, Tarkov being one of the most realistic shooters when it comes to mechanics and how a person moves, and etc., etc. So developers always try to find a sweet spot between the two, which fits into their game, which fits into their gameplay formula, because you cannot have, let's say, arcadey gun combat and then have realistic, really realistic melee combat, because it doesn't fit inside the whole idea of the gameplay formula. So yeah.
And again, just pointing out what Tanad in the comments is saying. Yeah, they are running into what some of us would definitely call problems. Like I'm definitely in the boat where I wanted both. I wanted first person and third person, but that's not something that I think is necessarily a whole, because they've said, as we've said a number of times already in the podcast today, is that this is an RPG first, not a shooter first, not a melee game first. It's not, that's not where its core is. The core and the heart of this game is story first, role play first, and then you have those other things that are added onto the sundae on top of that.
Yeah. And there's so many features revolving around first person, that body language, the way you speak, the way that dialogue works.
The gameplay is just a means to an end. I think in most of the previews they said they've spent most of their time talking and walking around and stuff, right? It's just
like just spend any amount of time watching somebody play through an actual legitimate playthrough of The Witcher, where they're not skipping dialogue and skipping scenes, where they're actually like, experiencing the story as it was meant to be played. It's not a sword and board or a slashing game. It's an actual like story. Listen, talk, discover, examine, more talk, more discovery, more and more talk and more talk and more talk. And it's like, even when you're doing some of these boss fights, it's like 40 minutes of story, dialogue, and interaction, following around, doing things, interacting with the NPCs. Then you got 10 minutes of a short boss fight. It's like that's the game. That's what they're going for.
Of course, you can go in full guns blazing. I don't know for how long, but
you can definitely try.
Yeah, you can try.
Going back to this melee thing, there's one thing that I'm really curious about, because if this didn't change, the Kerensikov boosterware is something that we know it's in the game. It's a cyberware that is available for V. And this combined with melee combat and combined with things as the like the gorilla arms, it's a combination that can be interesting, can be really interesting, especially if you use your katana at a certain speed that these booster wares give you. So the dismemberment should work a little different. But apart from that, yeah, that's a combination that is very interesting.
True.
Okay, I know you don't enjoy dismemberments the same way I do.
No, I think one thing which, when it came to dismemberments, when I saw that B-roll when the head pops off, it was too clean for me, way too clean. Without now, of course, the person could have, again, that's the thing, they could have virus in most of their body. That's why you don't have a lot of blood. I would just add more.
Yeah, I think if you went frame by frame through that section, you see it. The initial frame or two had like a big like gush of blood, and then it just
Oh.
kind of went away. So it might have been a visual bug. I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. There should have been more.
But it's like I also dislike games where it's like it goes too much for it, and it's like like not like
Well, when you're using the strong attack on the gig trailer with the mantis blades, and you skewer that guy and you pick him up, there's quite a bit there. So
yeah.
I don't think
And-
that should be an issue.
And it's like I'm not a super fan of that, but I'm also not opposed to other people enjoying it. Like I do not enjoy, Mortal Kombat. That game is just gratuitously just too much, just way too much, and just zero interest in that. But I'm not opposed to other people saying that it's a good game, because it's like it's just not my cup of tea. I don't have a dog in the race. I think if you want to think it's a good game, that's entirely up to you. I do not wish to make a judgment based off of that, because I dislike the game. If I dislike the game, I'm just not going to talk about it.
Was there a mention? I remember vaguely hearing about this. I don't know if it was over the weekend or what, but there's a streamer mode or something, and I'd imagine there's options to turn off gore and stuff like that. But is there like a nudity filter? I remember hearing that somewhere, like a streamer friendly just mode overall.
I have heard the same rumors. I've heard that there's a streamer friendly mode that turns off essentially all nudity and sex scenes, and then also reduces the amount of gore and blood that you're going to see. And again, I'm okay with that, so long as that, I really think that Twitch should create a more like, a more like, 18 plus kind of mode, not for gratuitous stuff, not, obviously not for like a prawn hub account or anything like that, but just having the ability to play like games that feature a little bit more nudity and sex and stuff like that, because I think that there's a market for that, and that like, I mean, I am a little tired of like, Commander Keen is probably one of my biggest pet peeves in the last like few years. It's like I grew up playing that game. I'm interested in playing either a complete revamp of like what the original game was, and just like faithfully keeping to the original concept and just remaking it in way better graphics. I'm okay with that, but part of me also wants to see like where's Commander Keen? Like I remember playing Commander Keen as I was a kid, and now I'm an adult. I want to know what Commander Keen has been up to in all those years. I would personally love to see like what's happened to him as a grown up. Now again, I'm good with either of those concepts, like either doing a faithful remake of like just having a kid on the pogo stick firing his homemade alien blaster and knocking enemies out, no violence, just knocking them out, and I think that's cool. I think that's a great concept. But I would also really love to see like did Commander Keen get it on with his he saved oh crap, I can't remember. Did he go to save his babysitter, or did he go and save his kid sister?
I have no idea.
Ah, darn! I feel terrible now, because I'm a big fan of the series, and I can't remember if it was like, I can't remember if the aliens kidnapped his babysitter or what. Anyways, I would love to know if he got it on with his babysitter like 20 years later. I mean, that's just something that I'm curious about. So yeah, call me crazy all you want, but I mean, he fought an alien armada. I'm pretty sure that she's got to at least look at him with some favor at some point. Just wondering, again, when they're older, not obviously when they're kids, but it's like I think gaming can grow up with people and also do it in a reasonable way. And Cyberpunk is one of those things where, and I mean, Cyberpunk and CDPR is one of those things where they've really kind of done that. It's like they're not treating you like you're 14 years old, because we're not. The vast majority of gamers are no longer 14 years old. Vast majority of gamers are like in their, I think averaged out, it's like you're in the mid to late 20s. It's like, can we get some content that's designed for mid to late 20s without either being gratuitous or being just, a terrible excuse for smut, or like, can we get something that's like artistically done well, like that doesn't need to be that, or that doesn't need to, like, come up with a bunch of random stuff that doesn't make sense when you look at it from a more, even perspective.
True. Will there be space? Mad Queen. Will there be space? Nothing.
I think she's still away.
Yeah, there was the thing with the Crystal Palace. Obviously, Crystal Palace has not been confirmed in the game. We do have the Orbital Air Space Center, I think. So that's a way to get to it, but it's not been confirmed. Maybe as an expansion. It is a.
I think
it is
way back when we had Lalea on the podcast, I probably said this like 50 times, but I think she said that we wouldn't be going to space in the main story. So I'd imagine it'd probably be an expansion.
She hinted at that. Now again, you got to remember that there are some things that that CDPR has said and they have lied about because they can't say the truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've definitely taken us for a spin before, so you can never be sure.
Yeah, because they cannot really, they can't always, like, it's always, when you ask a dev a question, sometimes you can feel that he just doesn't want to say that it's there, and sometimes you know that he says, like, no, we don't have that feature. So sometimes they have to mix and match so that, because it's difficult.
No,
it's difficult. Fair. Yeah, when you when you ask all these questions to devs, it's like, especially if they're live, they gotta come up with like a fast answer to, like, not to spoil anything, and because of course it might be something which is again a feature which might be removed, and they don't want to give people false hope. So sometimes they might say, no, we don't have that, and then they will put it. Not generally talking about Cyberpunk, but generally about devs.
So as far as somebody's asking a quick question here about the censorship in Japan, and I have to say that this is one of these scenarios where it's like, yeah, all right, they're censoring nudity in Japan. This is not necessarily new. They censor everything there as much as they possibly can. And now, like, 5% of their entire GDP is based off of, the porn industry, or the prawn industry. Sorry. So I would say that it probably isn't working well for them. So
it's really funny when people discuss this thing of censorship on Asia, when on different parts of the world there are different cultural perspectives that approach sex and violence and nudity and all these topics, and the approach is really different. And in here, I'm not trying to be judgmental. Each culture has its own approach. Europe has one, America has a different, and Asia has a different. And all have their ratings when it comes to entertainment. Here in Europe, we have the parental guidance. Don't remember the name in the States, but it's pretty funny because when a game is developed in Europe that has the American market in mind, usually when it comes to nudity, sexuality, and not that much violence, but mostly nudity and sexuality, they go to the American perspective, which is also they do this for the market more than the laws. But this can be seen as some sort of censorship as well. They censor themselves because they want to sell in a specific place. And that's why it's so funny for me when people on the States criticize censorship on Asia, when Europe censors themselves for the States. The market in the States also exercises censorship because they want to see things according to the cultural perspective, the same way as Asians. And by the way, this makes me especially happy because historically, AAA games developed in Europe have this thing that they adapt to the American perspective, and CD Projekt Red is not doing this. They are doing a deeply European game, and I'm enjoying this part so much.
Yeah, it's
No, yes,
really
because
different,
I mean
really
it's
different.
my culture, and I don't see it. I don't see it. I never see it reflected in blockbusters, and unless you go to European films that are thought to be seen in Europe, and then what does American cinema industry does? They redo the film and change a lot of things to adapt it to the cultural American perspective. And there's remakes of Spanish films that are very good, remakes that have an American version that is completely different to adapt it to the cultural perspective. And this is something that on high end budget product entertainment products is usually not seen. And I'm super glad that the break that said, well, okay, we're Europeans and we're going to do it our way. We don't fuck around.
Gamer Girl 5317, thank you for $5. Gamers that I know are not in their 20s. I know many over 30, some in their 50s. I'm in my 50s and have played since PlayStation 2 at least 30 years. Yes, gaming has been around for a while. A lot of people that grew up playing NES or like even before that are older now. So yes, and also to
actually, sorry, go ahead.
just to say one thing about nudity and how it is here. And it's not only that it's done to like showcase the European way of nudity, but it's really important to that world of cyberpunk. So it's not like they put in the whole customization just to be cool. It is very tied to cyberpunk, going all the way from the tabletop RPG of creating your character, creating your own story. So yeah.
The girl with the dragon tattoo, original much better. Well, yes, they changed. There was a very famous, it was very famous in Spain, film called Open Your Eyes. That was a revolution for the filmmaking industry of Spain. The film was fantastic, and it got remade in the States, starring Tom Cruise. And it was thought to be realistic of the life of a rich kid that was on his 20s, and he went to parties and have drugs. And in the American version, instead of having drugs, they drink a lot. And at least here in Spain, drugs are very popular amongst rich people because they can't afford them. But things like that, things are adapted to the cultural perspective of a specific place. And also, it's very typical from the entertainment industry of the States of removing anything that has a certain personality to be able to reach to as much people as possible. And these specific things that give the product personality is what make the product interesting. If you remove all of it, then you have pure shit. Also happened the same with Ghost in the Shell, the remake. They removed all the parts that they removed all the parts that were interesting about Ghost in the Shell, and they created something that was only the shell.
Generic mess, basically. Yeah, true. Neon, were you saying something before? Before I cut you off.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I read a statistic a while ago that the average gamer was 33. So, just going back to the whole older gamers and then the previous generation and yeah, growing up with video games and stuff like that. So that's if that's true, it's quite old, right? 33 is not young. So I'm glad we're getting.
I think there's a market for like games targeting like 50-60-year-olds. I think that we're getting to that point, and I don't know what that would be. And I'm not saying that it's going to be like hey, go on a cruise. No, I don't think that's it. I mean just the way of approaching storytelling or a particular scenario. It's like one of the games that I'm surprised that we haven't really seen yet is like playing the story of like a grandfather or grandmother trying to like protect the grandchildren in some kind of like war or conflict or something. Like I feel that that's ripe for like deep heartfelt storytelling that could really click in with a lot of people, because I mean just, no family life is perfect, obviously, but it's like typically children and grandparents get along better than children and their parents do. So in fact, I heard this I heard this one thing. Do you know why grandparents and grandchildren typically get along, better? That's usually typically the best relationship in a family unit. And the answer is because they have a common enemy.
Mm-hmm.
No laughs, really? Okay, I got it.
No, I
If
didn't
you're
get
laughing, laugh in the chats, please. I want to see if
I
that
didn't
hits
get
home.
an enemy.
Sorry, I was reading the comment.
I was reading all the ages in the chat, being
Okay.
completely surprised.
I don't have an excuse. I'm just stupid. Who's the common enemy?
The grandparents and grandchildren have a common enemy, being the parent, right?
Children.
So the grandparent, the parents, their children that drive them mental. Growing up, they listen to music that they don't like and all that stuff. But when they have kids, then the grandparents get to spoil their grandchildren, and they enjoy that. And then the children, they don't like their mom and dad because the mom and dad tell them it's time to go to bed, and grandma is like, here, have an extra bowl of ice cream. It's like, that's it. Okay, now people are laughing. It's all good. It's all good. Okay.
Yeah,
we're good. We're good.
Now they're laughing with lag because there's lag with YouTube.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a lag thing going on, but yeah, no, that's always that perspective of storytelling. I really think that's a niche that is just hasn't been put out. It's like, it's like I heard somebody say once that Community was one of their favorite shows, and it was one of their favorite shows because their grandparents went, oh look, it's Chevy Chase, I love Chevy Chase, let's watch this show. And it was one of their favorite shows, and they ended up bonding over it. And so, because they had this old character and these young characters, and they were able to have these really funny moments, and they realized that, grandma and grandpa are cool. So yeah, no, I did describe that.
Sorry for changing the subject, but I'd like to answer. I'm going to be an Arasaka loyal in my first playthrough. Well, Sifat, I have a theory, and you may end up being more Arasaka loyal, even if you don't want to.
Hmm. Gamer
Because Arasaka is going to be everywhere, every fucking where.
You described the first Last of Us parental theme. I'll be dead. I don't know. Sorry, I'm a bit tired.
Yeah, the Gamer Girls is basically that's kind of the theme of the first book, first Last of Us, and I mean that's sort of it's sort of there. It's not quite there. I'm thinking more like much older grandparent, and who's not physically fit, who can't just walk around taking people out like a boss, and a 9-year-old. It's like that's a they're both essentially weak in a dangerous world, right? And they've got to work together in order to make things happen. And to me, that's where I think I really think that's a story arc that's worthy of
that
being
would
put out
actually
there
be a
at some
really
point.
cool idea.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing with some war that happens, and it's a mother and her 3 kids, 2 to 5 or something like that, and trying to survive that scenario, and what would a mother be willing to do for her kids. It's that is a story again where it's you could really hit home some really emotional lessons, I think.
Yeah, there was also a Plague Tale: Innocence, which was a very interesting interaction. I don't know if it's a brother or sister, I forgot.
It's brother and sister.
Yeah.
Well, it's brother and they're half siblings.
Yeah. That's also a game.
It works. I really like that one too. It wasn't quite what I was hoping it would be, but it was decent. It was really decent, and I definitely, if you are interested in that kind of a sibling concept, it's because this kid is running around, and he can sneak around because he's so small and so tiny, but at the same time he's he's incredibly susceptible to being hurt. So these are the concepts that get me more involved and motivated to look at and dig into than the latest battle royale game, right? Because it's a good gameplay is fine, but when it comes down to like actual story, I think that's where they excel, and that's where CDPR is excelling with this, because again, this is an RPG first, not a battle royale game first. Thank God.
Yeah, and
I would
also,
like an sorry.
and just also regarding the story, they said they took a lot of feedback from the Witcher 3 main story and the pacing issues, and they're trying to not have that in this game as much as they can. Yeah, done.
I would like to answer a comment that already passed up. So I'm sorry because I don't know who made the comment that was talking about romance and genders. And there has been a conversation lately regarding that in the character creation, people that expected to have all the possible possibilities. One of the things that made them shocked about it is that the gender was tied to the voice of the character, and the conversation revolved around they couldn't understand why, as it seems, quote unquote, seems that it would be really easy to just let you choose your character, and then at the end you choose the gender. And I followed this conversation, which is very, very interesting, because we're talking about cyberpunk, and in cyberpunk is a world where you can physically be whatever you want. This includes a shark, because there were shark people, and and exotics and all that. And it was funny because all this conversation was having in mind the English language, the main language of the game, which is English, but it's translated and localized to a lot of other languages. So in English is a language that is not gendered. It's not gendered almost at all. So if you choose a voice and then choose a gender separately, because the game gives you more options, the things wouldn't change. The things wouldn't change a lot, and maybe the number of lines that they should add are the ones when V refers to himself directly, like, I don't know, I'm the man who's going to kick your ass, things like that. I don't think that the number of lines in English would be a lot if you have both voices, both tones for a gender. What's the thing? That the rest of languages of the world doesn't work like that. Spanish, for instance, Spanish is a language that is strongly gendered. I mean, in Spanish, even objects have a gender. The chair, the bed have a gender. And Polish is even more gendered. For instance, in Polish, if I say, I want this, the verb want is said differently depending on the gender that I am, which means that maybe not in English, but in the rest of languages where this game is localized, they should repeat 100% or almost 100% of the lines that V says, which is the character that has more lines in the game, which makes this feature from really complicated to impossible to develop. But it was a very interesting conversation. But again, the problem is that people has English in mind when commenting about these things, but not all languages work like English. English is a very quote unquote easy language when it comes to this, because you don't have such variations in words depending on who's talking, depending on who you're addressing to, which is a thing that in other languages happen.
Yes. Yeah, same with Bosnian. You have 7 ways to say one single word. 7 ways which can be used for differently in a sentence, depending on who you talk to and in which time you're talking to. So yeah.
I've also found that innuendo and exaggeration really not easy to translate.
Please. What?
Oh, sorry. Maybe I should say it like this. Innuendo and exaggeration, so easy to translate. Oh my God. It's like, why can't you do that all the time? Again. Okay, now he's laughing. Okay, good.
Took me a while to realize what innuendo is.
Well, it's more about the exaggeration, but yeah, no, same sort of the same thing. It's like that's really hard to like add into the game and like really flush out. I mean, it would be great if they could really like do it on a super level. And I mean, we are getting there. So there's some really great like projects that are working on like adding audio and stuff to games, and it's like there'll be a point where they just like they have like people's like voice codes, and they just use those voice codes to replicate like stuff, and like you can like it's like a level. It's like sarcasm 10%, humor 20%, dry, data driven, 30 or 40%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to mix and match the voice. If I understood it correctly, the tone of the voice.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And you just program it in there, then you feed it your lines, and you tweak things on a micro scale, and then you're done. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be super scary for like, people who use that to like, try and frame other people for like, anything from social faux pas to like actual crime. Like that's scary how close they're getting to with some of that, and so even some of that like face replacement stuff. It's like, good lord. But
Yeah, I think I saw like people already doing that on YouTube. There's various channels where you have I don't know Bush singing a lullaby or something like that, and it sounds almost the same, or
yeah,
whatever celebrity it is. That plus deep fakes, we're screwed.
yeah,
We're
no.
screwed big
But I
time.
mean, there's also the other apps. There's the app that'll like swap your gender or your visible gender, or however you want to phrase that, and then you can then take that and do a facial swap with somebody else. Then you can have another app that then takes those two people and makes them have a baby, and then takes that baby and age them up 50 years, and then take their face and then replace it with yours and de-age it down, and then swap the gender back again. It's like,
Yeah.
what monstrosity have we created that we can do this?
Yeah.
Also, who has the time to do this? I still don't understand that. Like,
People are
I'd like,
practicing.
sorry.
They're
I would
practicing.
like to answer something in the comments, because we
Sure.
have a huge Polish community, and they are saying, yeah, Polish is super incredibly gendered, but just the exact example you put is incorrect. I am sorry.
I have a question from Bro. What do you guys think about cyberpunk music? I never listened to that techno music that much, but music in cyberpunk is fucking amazing. Yeah, I agree. It's not only techno. There's a lot of industrial in it, rock. Yeah, there's a lot of varieties of music.
House.
House, yes, of
EDM.
course. Yeah.
The techno part is P.T. Adamczyk. He's the guy that is I'm starting to know the difference. I love that. I'm starting to know the difference between the three of them. And not only that, I'm starting to know that when two of them are doing a thing together.
Mm.
They have such a distinctive way of doing things. And P.T. Adamczyk is like more techno, more house, while Marcin Szubowicz is like more organic,
Mhm.
and Paul Leonard Morgan is super industrial.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Yeah.
they mix the styles together, because some songs are collaborative work, it's amazing, because it's like three very different styles. You perceive the difference if you're into electronics. Maybe if you're not, if this is not a style you like, because these things happen. For you, it's chumba chumba, and that's it.
Yeah.
But yes, it's super interesting.
Yes, that's why.
Well, I'm so my requirement for this to be a good cyberpunk game is to have either some like, maybe some baby metal, maybe some Ladybeard. Yeah, Ladybeard would probably be nice. That'd be kind of nice to have at least a little bit of that.
I
in
think we can live without baby metal.
Oh no, it's so good.
Yeah, that's why I'll always recommend going if you own. I don't know if I think you can download it right now on GOG if you own Witcher and Thronebreaker or Gwent. I think you can download the entire soundtrack from there, and you also have like the artists for those tracks. And I really recommend going through it and looking at the styles they have. By the way, do you know is Mikołaj Strzynski actually working on this, on Cyberpunk? Do we know that?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
I hope so. I love his tracks in Thronebreaker. So good.
Who do you said?
Mikhail Strinsky.
Yeah, I
I
think
might,
so.
I might, I might
I'm not
pronounce.
sure. I'm not sure, but I think it's not. Because the two people from Red that are working on it's Martin Chubovic and Vidyadabchek. They still need someone to put music on Wend. They are still developing more things, more content for Wend.
Yes, and of course.
I like how they're gonna have hip hop and rap in it too. Run the
Yes.
Jewels and ASAP and. I mean,
Well, actually, Cyberpunk. Excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was done.
Actually, cyberpunk music is music that talks about cyberpunk's themes, and I think that Round the Jewels are absolutely perfect for that. And I have a Spotify list where I put a representative sample of all the people that was announced to participate in the soundtrack. I'm going to put it in the chat.
There was also quick news about DirectX 12. The game is going to be exclusive for DirectX 12. So if you, for some reason, still operate on Windows 8, you won't be able to run the game. And I already saw an article somewhere that someone said like the game that have DirectX 12 are glitchy and buggy. Yes, when you have DirectX 11 and 12 at the same time where you can pick and choose, but I believe if it's only developed for one, that you won't have problems. Of course they know that. They want to polish the game. Yeah.
Elrindor, the new Round the Jewels album literally talks about the world of Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, it's so awesome. It's available for free. You can find it on Spotify, you can find it on YouTube, you can find it everywhere for free. It's amazing. Go take a hear. I was going to say go take a look, but you don't see music. So yeah, go take here because it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Speaking of tape, when is the Squish track dropping? Gamer Girl 5317 again. Thank you for the donation. I think this is a question for you, MadQueen.
If you develop insert gendered language, I believe Gamer Girl that you don't understand what gendered language means. Gendered language means that words have a gender. And they have always been, in the case of Spanish, since the times of the Roman Empire. This is so not a new thing. It's how a language works. And when in Spanish, when I say a glass of water, the word glass is in masculine, but it's like that. Is the way of talking Spanish. And unpronounced. This is Cyberpunk. This is a transhumanist game. Cyberpunk is about this. In any other game, you may try to impose your ideas about that, but if you try to do it on Cyberpunk, then I'm very sorry to tell you, you are not understanding Cyberpunk. And political correctness, I didn't see any kind of political correctness or correctness of anything in the game, apart from, technical correctness. But I know that people try to make very bigoted points about having more options in the game, but it's the wrong game to do that. Hello, it's Cyberpunk. We already had that in the law. It's not something that CD Projekt invented. It's not something that they are doing because they want to please people. The only person that they should please is Mike Pondsmith, who is the person who invented this universe. But what? There were already transgender people in this universe 30 years ago. If you want to complain about that, you're a little late. And in Cyberpunk, you can find characters that kicked ass and were trans, and nobody gave a shit about that. So why are we going to start to care 30, almost 40 years after? And it's always a matter of giving more options. What's the problem with giving more options? If they were given less, then I would understand the complaint. But if they're given more, what's the problem?
True. We have German words have genders too. Yeah, man. Took me 8 years and I still don't know all of them. I'm not even that good with German, and I had it for 8 years in school. I apologize to all the German people watching. I'm sorry. It's a difficult
Well, I
language.
am curious when English-based people that their main language is English learns any other language. How do they manage that? Because English, in comparison, is super simple. But then you start with German. German is complicated even for a Spanish speaker because it has a lot of combinations of things.
French is by far the most enigmatic language, for me, at least, to learn.
I suspect that in like 50 years we'll all be speaking to each other via memes and little like emoticons. Like that's the new language of the future.
I would like to answer another question that says, but that's a good question. What about the neutral they bullshit? Well, I really hope that you are not a native English speaker, because it's going to be very sad that a Spaniard corrects you and tells you that Shakespeare already used the neutral they. 16th century. Sorry that a Spaniard has to tell you that. It's not something new. Stop trying to find ways to throw shit at people. Stop doing that because it's absurd. And again, you're in the wrong name. There's one concept in Cyberpunk, in the Cyberpunk universe. You had the androgynes. They had no gender. It already existed in Cyberpunk. It's nothing new. And again, if you want to complain about that, you are 30 years late. So yes, don't try this with Cyberpunk because you are in the wrong game.
Yeah, when something is put, and that's what I always say, if something is put in a game, no matter what it is, just to check a box, which is, it doesn't fit in the world, whatever, it's just put there to please someone, and it doesn't have any explanation behind it, any logical perspective behind it, that's wrong. But if something is canon, if something is there, then it's not a problem. And even if someone has a vision to implement something, let's say whatever it was, gender, like, okay, yeah, gender, you're talking about 2077 where people can be sharks and dragons. Why do we have such a big discussion? I mean, people have this big of a discussion everywhere. Twitter, whatever, about gender and what is gender, what is even gender in 2077, like.
Dominic, Cecilia, well, we already answered that question about the V and the different voices. That wouldn't be difficult to make a patch for. No, yes, it's really difficult because they need to create 2 more voices with all the lines for all the languages that are gendered, that are all except English. This is technically difficult and it's very expensive. Maybe modders, that because a mod with voice, it's not the first time that this has been done for a game. Maybe a modder can do that, but don't expect the player to throw more money at the game, because changing, doubling all the localization of all the languages, that's something that I honestly wouldn't do that to ask of a developer to do. For the complication and for how expensive it is.
Yeah, just the time investment, right?
Yeah. Okay. We've been going on for 2 hours. Think we're gonna be finishing soon now. Any thoughts for the end?
There's just some news to kind of pay attention to. We've got there's a cool event coming up here on the 9th, and then we also have potentially the surprise Bethesda announce.
Wait, what's
stream.
on the 9th?
The 9th that's about Blizzard, I think.
Okay.
No.
But on the 11th, we're hearing these rumors that Bethesda is going to do something, and Bethesda came out to assure people that no, they certainly do not have an event planned for June.
July?
I just thought that was really funny because it's not June anymore.
Like what?
That's the response. The response was, yeah, we don't have anything planned for June. It's like that's like, oh really?
They that we're not getting Cybe's jokes.
They're falling on deaf ears, unfortunately, today.
Yeah.
Cybe, we apologize.
Again, I know. Okay, whatever.
Like this whole Judy situation is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's just people making jokes. Some people take it too serious, like people are simping. No, people making jokes. Chill out. And we talked about Bethesda. The stream is now complete. Any last thoughts for the end? What do you guys have planned for the next week?
For me, it's just gonna be regular stuff, news. Yeah, that's pretty much it this week, I think, for me.
MadQueen?
Well, I just released a video about the districts of Night City, the whole explanation of the districts, the boosted gangs on that districts, and also showing very, very, very beautiful concept art of Night City that it's fantastic. I love it. And next week is going to be Arasaka week. Because I have 4 videos on Arasaka. The funny thing is that, excuse me, the funny thing is that when Cyberpunk Red is out, I'll probably have to redo these 4 videos because I'll have much more lore to talk about. But yeah, this is going to be Arasaka week.
Sib?
So just more cuts and slices from the game and for Cyberpunk, and I think we have an amazing tier list coming for something really cool for Cyberpunk. You're gonna want to tune into that. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're all continuing to do the giveaway for
yes.
Oh yeah, the giveaway. Yeah.
The big pack from our Talsorian and
Monster Fight Club.
Excuse me. Well, yes, Monster Fight Club. Excuse me. So we are doing we're doing that. If you come up with some piece of art for us, we will put your name in the draw, and that piece of art can be everything from music to a poem to video to whatever. And it's really cool. We've got some crazy submissions already. Somebody wrote out like a 400-word love poem to Cyberpunk, so that's awesome. Somebody else did our big supporter of ours in the chat. He's done some music for us, Mr. Game Notes. So that's some pretty cool stuff. So if you're interested in seeing what people are submitting, come by the Discord because it's pretty awesome right now.
Yeah, and for everyone who are not familiar with the giveaway, it's actually a collaboration between Talsorian Games and Monster Fight Club. Now, in this package, so each 4 of us are doing the giveaway. So you have 4 chances to win a Cyberpunk Red sourcebook, which is coming out, signed by Mike Pondsmith. You will get a Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart Kit. You will get a... now we go into the Monster Fight Club. They're actually creating a full... how would I say, overlay of the city, like terrain you can play your tabletop games in. And they have a Metropolis 3x3 map, which is, you can actually customize it, remove certain things from it, and you can role play in that how would I say, map, as you're doing role playing in the tabletop, as you're playing a tabletop game. And you will get 16 figures, including the one with Mike Pondsmith.
Indeed, and we all have different ways to win.
Yes.
So Cybes was to create some sort of art for his channel, or relating to Cyberpunk. I think LastKnownMeal was a role playing scenario.
Yes, role playing scenario.
Mad Queen, I don't remember exactly what yours was.
The what?
For your giveaway, what are the rules for your what do people have to do?
Yes. Using the hashtag MonsterFightQueen.
Right.
What line would you use to pick a fight with Mike Pondsmith Cobb? Pick a fight, not hurt his feelings.
Yeah, that was a good one. And then mine is just name Mike Pondsmith's dog.
That's actually cool.
Well, apparently his corgi is named Pikachu, according to Jay. So that's pretty cool. Fun fact of the day.
What? Can you repeat the name?
His corgi is named Pikachu.
Pikachu. That's so Mike.
I know, right?
True. All right. So we've been going on over 2 hours. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Next week it's going to be on...
I think it's mine. And
Yes.
we're going to have, I believe Paris is next week. So
Yeah, we're going to double
we're starting to
check.
starting to get some guests in here. So it should be a good time.
True. And of course, more news about Cyberpunk will come. Finally, the veil of silence has been removed. Of course, now they have to market the game. The marketing plan is staying the same. So don't worry, you're gonna get more and more info as we get closer to the game. And it kind of started now, so I mean already you have, this is the most news we had since Deep Dive, I believe. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. You have all the links to our channels down below, including Twitter and Discord and the YouTube channels. So please check it out. And each and every single week, the podcast is on a different channel. Next week, same time on Sunday on the Neon Arcade channel. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and bye everyone.
See you guys.
Bye.